All right, I think we're good to go.
And just so you all know, we are going to record this, and that's just mostly so that other people can have access to the presentation if they weren't able to attend today. Hi, Ruth. Welcome.
Sharon, you're sharing your slides?
Yep. I'll start them now.
All right.
Oh, I forgot to share my screen though. Not helpful. There we go. All right, now, bar. There we go. All right, well, welcome everyone. And now that I'm sharing my screen, I can't see anyone. So Lori's going to be monitoring the chat, or oops,
sure.
I hit that. And I suppose also just monitoring your faces or your questions or anything like that. But anyways, welcome. It's great to have you here. We saw some of your names on the responses, but if you wouldn't mind putting in the chat your name, where you're joining from, and one thing you would like to learn today, we would love to hear that feedback from you. It's been really fun seeing where people have been joining us from all across the country, really, when we do these different webinars. So that's really great, a real hidden positive consequence of having to work from home, as we've gotten to share information and learn from people all across the country.
Okay, Heather Hewell is in Rice County.
Great.
Don't know what I don't know, she says. Okay, great to know.
Good point.
Dinah, Cornell Cooperative Extension.
We've had a really faithful contingent of New York State residents joining these webinars. That's so fun.
Yes. Let's see, did I miss people? Wendy is in Rochester, have an 18-year-old going to college.
All right.
In the fall, and so looking for tips to share with her.
Mm-hmm.
All right, and Heather Lance is in Anoka. She has a 21-year-old stepson who would like to successfully launch, looking
Awesome.
for things I can learn to help him to be successful.
Great. Well, we have some
right.
pretty neat tools to show you all today.
Yeah.
So this is the name of our presentation today. I'm an adult, now what? And here we are again. My name is Sharon Powell, and Lori Hendrickson is my partner in crime today. And we are both educators with the Center for Family Development in University of Minnesota Extension. And so we also both focus on financial capability. And Lori actually leads the team that developed a program called RentWise, which is a tenant education program. And I was trained by Lori, and then I teach that in different settings. And so we'll be taking some of our stuff from that curriculum today, as well as other stuff focused on young people. Anything else you want to add about that, Lori?
No, just glad that you're here with us today. I would say too, Ruth piped in as well on the chat and shared her information and said that she's in Minneapolis and she has 20 somethings to think about.
Oh, great. Well, I should add, I am a parent as well. I have a 20-year-old and a 16-year-old, and my 20-year-old just finished his sophomore year in college and is taking a gap year next year. And so is back living in Minneapolis, which is where I live. But he and his girlfriend and two of their friends really were just so excited about renting a house. So they did finally manage to rent one. That's where they live now. So a lot of this information is directly relevant in my own life too. Okay, so now we have a little poll just to ask, why are you participating in today's webinar? Is this for personal information, or is it a professional, or maybe for both? And I think I can start the poll.
I did get it.
Oh, great. Okay.
Yep.
Okay, that's great. It's awesome when you can use something that is both personal, but also you can use it for professional stuff. As you can see, most people said that they're using it for both. And it's one of the benefits of teaching in the area that Lori and I teach, and I use a lot of the stuff for both personal and professional use. All right, so a lot of what we're going to focus on today will be about moving into your own place for the first time and all the things that the responsibilities and the knowledge and skills you need to do that. So it's exciting, really exciting. As I said, my 20-year-old is super excited, but it's also really hard work as he's learning. So today we're going to look into the best practices for renting your first home. We're going to provide tips related to managing money. We're going to offer suggestions for keeping your home in good condition. And then we're going to discuss the rights and responsibilities that come with renting. So the first resource that we wanted to share with you is this program called the Jumpstart Reality Check. And this is a great thing for young people to fill out. And we have the website right here that you can go to. And I think, oops, can we put that in the chat? Lori, can you put a copy of that in the chat?
Yeah, I can. I will I've got the jumpstart.org, and I think you can just search reality check for that.
Okay, great. So my son and I filled this out together, and here are his results. So what you do is you go to this website and they just ask a person a series of questions, like kind of related to your money management, the things you want out of life, things that are important to you. So it really is a neat tool just to help you kind of explore your values and your preferences and your goals. And then it kind of puts a dollar amount on that. So based upon the things you said are important to you, here's how much money you need to be currently earning. One thing I will say is that, like when we filled it out, Sean, my son, answered these questions according to how he feels now. So it's kind of just a quick imprint of what you feel like now, not maybe where you want to be like 20 years from now or something, So, but for right now, here's what he needed to earn, about $13.74 per hour or $550 per week, basically, to meet all of his needs. And then it even goes down and tells you then what kind of jobs can pay you that much money. And so hairdresser, hairstylist, bus driver, data entry, or pest control. And that's the part where I think it's also important to remember, like, he doesn't want to probably do any of those things for his career, but it's good to know really, especially how much money he should be earning in order to meet all of his expenses. Okay, so when you start thinking about living on your own, there are some things you need to do, mostly, again, having to do with exploring your own preferences, your own values, and your lists of what are your needs and what are your wants. And then from all of those things, you can begin to create a budget for yourself, because that's the other thing that you really need to do is figure out how much you can afford when it comes to paying rent. So what we have over here is something called a housing needs and wants checklist. And this is from our Rent Wise workbook, which is that tenant education program that I was telling you about. And I really like this because you can bring something like this with you on when you're looking at potential apartments. And the thing I like about that is that when I used to go looking for rental units, I would get sort of overwhelmed by the apartment itself and forget all the things that I thought were really important to me. And something like this list helps you just basically check them off. Like, is it actually near a bus line? In this case, you could say whether you think it's important or not. So you really want to focus in on the things that are most important. But anyways, I like that kind of thing. Yeah.
I'm sorry. I was just going to say that we are going to provide a PDF of the workbook as well. When we send out a final email thanking you for attending, we'll send you the workbook as well.
Oh, that's awesome. So you all will have all of this stuff. Okay. So then this is hard to see because we took a big document and shrunk it down, but this is something that we do with people when they're taking RentWise. It's called the housing priority game. And each of these little sections is a different topic. Like this first one says location. And so what you do is you're given a certain number of beans, 30 beans, basically, and you look at this housing priority document and you think about what's really important to you. So when it comes to location, one of the options is that it's 10 minutes from work, school, childcare, shopping, other services. And so if that's what was really important to you, you would take 3 beans and put it there. And so basically you distribute your beans among each of these different categories to determine what's really most important to you. And when I teach this, and I do this mostly with young people, and they're all working on their, rent-wise priority game. And so I do it too, just because it's kind of boring just to stand there. And it's always interesting to me. I kind of learn something new each time I do it. And of course, I'm in a very different place in life than the young people that I'm working with, but it is still interesting to think about what's important to me too. So it's a great way for people to get a better handle on what truly is important to them. One thing I've found is that sometimes people don't even, it's sort of like one of you put in the chat, you said, I don't know what I don't know. And I think when it comes to things like renting, that's the case as well. People aren't even aware that there's choices to be made among some of these. So the thing I like about the housing priority game is it basically presents different categories as an option, even that maybe you hadn't even considered in the past. So it's a lot of fun, and it's just a good conversation starter. Yes?
It always surprises me too that when we do this, there are things that are non-negotiable for some people too. So, maybe you're the person, or your child is the person who says, I want to have laundry available to me. And so that is not a negotiable thing. We've seen that happen for a number of these categories where people say, nope, I have to have that. And so that is their sticking point, and they're going to make sure that whatever they choose has that item. Again, it's about priorities and what's important.
Yes, exactly. And so this just gives you a kind of a low stakes way of considering it. Like, you don't have to say yes first and then know whether or not it was important. This allows you to consider things in a low risk environment. Okay. And then this is another thing that I think similar to what I was saying about the housing priority checklist. This rental survey is another great tool that's pretty basic, but something it never occurred to me till I saw it in our RentWise workbook. And so basically what this allows you to do is take in all of this information about multiple units that you're looking at. Again, sometimes it gets overwhelming, or you lose track of, kind of what were the differences between everything and whether or not you've paid an application fee and so forth. And so this allows you to put everything in one place and in a spot where you can actually compare things. And so then you can look to see, really, even though one might, for instance, have a lower rent, you might have to pay more in, I don't know, utilities or something like that. So this allows you to compare all of those different things when you're looking at different units. Some other things that you might consider that are going to be listed on the rental survey is, does the rental unit appear to be clean and in good repair? Does the property manager agree to make repairs promptly? Does the property manager seem sincere and trustworthy? Again, when you're working particularly with young people, it's important that they feel that they have the ability to advocate for themselves and that they're not being treated poorly because they are young and inexperienced. And that happens, I'm afraid, more than I wish it did. People don't give young people the respect they deserve necessarily. And so this allows young people to stay organized, know their rights, and use that to advocate for themselves. So I like that aspect of it as well. Okay. So once you begin to get a better idea of what kind of unit you really are looking for, then it's important for you to consider what is affordable for you to pay. And so a kind of rule of thumb that has been around for quite a while is that you should try to pay 30% or less of your household gross income. Now, I don't think there's any young people on here today, and probably most of the folks on here are aware of this, but when we talk about gross income, that's the amount of money you get paid before they take out things like taxes and Social Security and those kinds of things. And so it's a little bit higher amount than sometimes people expect. But basically, what happens these days is a lot of people pay much more than 30% of their household gross income for a place to rent. And so it's important to really consider what can happen to you if you pay for more rent than you can afford, and do the best of your ability. Just try as hard as you can to make your rent affordable, because once you sign a lease, that's a legally binding contract. And, you know, they're required to pay it through the end of the contract until they get out of the lease. And it can be a real hassle for people. Right now, just a little FYI, approximately 43% of Minnesotans are rent cost burdened, which means they're paying more than 30% of income on rent. And if you work it all with low income families, they're paying lots more than 30%. So there's some things you can do, like what are ways you can reduce the amount you pay for rent. You can basically bring in more roommates. That would make your expenses lower. You can, if you're going to do that, you got to make sure everyone living there is on the lease, though, because you could be in breach of contract if you don't do that. You can also look for lower cost apartments. So maybe look in a cheaper area. I know kids often want to kind of start off with this dream of, oh, it's going to be this cool apartment. It's going to have everything I ever wanted. And then they look to see what they can actually afford, and kind of a reality check, in real life, a reality check. And so they're like, oh, brother. But it's important to remind them that this is the beginning of a lifelong process of finding good housing. And so this is just the first step. Okay. So now we're going to talk a little bit about money management, so that when I just said, you know, it's important to find a place that you can afford. And so people often feel a little bit overwhelmed when it comes to knowing how, gosh, I am having a terrible time with I'm talking with my hands, obviously, and I keep hitting my keyboard as I'm talking, so I apologize. Anyways, it's oftentimes tricky for people to know how much they can afford until they take advantage of some money management tools. And one of my all-time favorite tools that we teach is a spending tracker. And it's a great place to start, just to know how much you actually are spending on different categories in your life. And so once you know that, you're informed. You can make informed decisions at that point and decide, oh, I'm actually spending this much right now on, I don't know, cable or streaming services or something like that. It seems like a lot to me. I'd actually like to spend less. And so then you can actually make a legitimate choice where you have the information and you've made a decision that you like. And so it can help you avoid lots of problems down the road, like late fees or even eviction if you're unable to pay, or things like that. So the way a spending tracker works is that you just decide on a set period of time. The gold standard to me is 1 month, so that you can really see all of your monthly expenses recorded. But you could even start with something like a week, and you just list everything you spend money on. And the more detailed you are about that, where you put down every little expense, the more you'll know about yourself at the end of your time. So you want to put down the date, you want to put where you spent the money, what you spent the money on, and then how much you spent. And over the time that you're doing this, categories will begin to emerge, and you'll see, like, I spent that much on, iced coffee from McDonald's, or, oh my gosh, I didn't realize I was spending so much on snacks when I go to the movie, or, things like that. You'll be surprised, usually in one way or another. Like I said, the reason why this is one of my favorite tools is because it's very low tech. So you don't have to be like a whiz of any sort to do this. You just have to be faithful to writing this stuff down. And it provides so much valuable information. Like I can tell you, as someone who teaches financial capability, that there are a lot of people in the world who have a very vague understanding of how much money they have coming in and how much money they have going out of their financial plan every month. So this can really give you a lot of detailed information that you can then use to make informed choices. Okay, so it's really a good place to start. Are there any questions or anything so far? I feel like I'm just sort of charging through this, so. Okay, well, I am going to stop sharing my screen for a moment because I want to do this activity with you guys. This is something called the Mentimeter, and it's a neat way to do a word cloud. And so I had on there the question, what do you think of when you hear the word budget? And so I'm going to just go back into there and get the code. So I want you all to go to this website, menti.com, and type, oh, not this website, type in this code to Menti, MENTI.com. Let me write that in here too.
You've got the code then? Because I didn't get it before you stopped sharing, so.
Yeah, I'm going to put it in the chat here.
All right, great.
There we go. So the code is 994990066. And then I'm going to pop over to, okay, I think you should be able to go into menti.com now and put in that budget or that code, and then you can write, what do you think of when you hear the word budget? This is the question I would like to hear from all of you. And then as soon as I'm positive you guys are able to get in here, I'll share my screen again and you can see the word cloud.
If somebody wants to just put in the chat, I'm in, or something like that, I am currently in it. So I just want to see if others are able to, because I can't see anyone else in it.
Ooh, okay.
Wendy's there, good.
Great. Okay, I'm going to go back to Zoom and share my screen, and then I'll go there so y'all can see. Okay, so here's what we got so far. And with other people adding in, it will get more things. Will
awesome.
Show up. Yeah, cool. That's neat.
Wow.
Woo! That's exciting. I can tell you, Lori and I have been working on making menti.com work for us. And so I was a little bit nervous, but you all are doing great. And these are showing up just fine. Wow. So I think everybody's maybe had a chance to do it at this point. But you can see the bigger words are what gets written more frequently, and then the smaller words are what get written a little bit less frequently. So it's kind of a continuum. So savings is the number one thing it looks like that people think of when they hear the word budget. Money, yeah. But then there's a lot of things that are very common, like things like uncertain, restrictions, stress. Yep, bills. Ooh, practical. I like that. Boring. Somebody said boring. I'm with you. I do not come to budgeting naturally. I've become a convert over the years, and debt. Yep. Plan. These are great. Okay. So I'm going to go back to, thanks everybody. That was awesome. That worked. Oh, whoops. That was the wrong thing. Present is what I wanted to do. Okay. So basically, I hear you. Budgeting is not like everybody's number one favorite thing to do, I don't think. But there are some advantages to budgeting. Mostly what I just mentioned, this idea of knowing your money management system, like knowing what you have coming in and going out, even though it can be kind of stressful for people. Once you know that information, it tends to, my experience is people tend to say, oh, I'm not in as bad a shape as I thought. And then they say, now I have material that I can use to make a plan that's workable for me. So it's kind of liberating in some ways. And it helps people feel a greater sense of control over their lives. Once they know their options, then they know how, what they can realistically choose to do with that money. So it can be very liberating, yeah, for people. But it does, you know, people often bring a lot of kind of like a sense of shame almost about their practices or their lack of practice. And what I would say is that it's too bad, because in the money management world, there are a lot of experts out there who like to kind of shake their finger at you and say, here's the way you should be managing your money. And if you don't do it like this, then you're doing it wrong. And that really bothers me, because actually I think there are just a million different ways to manage your money successfully. Mostly what makes it a successful plan is if it matches up with your preferences, your behaviors, your strengths, your skills, your goals. So it's really a matter of being a good match rather than being the right way or the wrong way. There's a lot of different ways you can do it. So I would just say, keep that in mind. Anyways, when it comes to managing your money, it's important to be able to estimate your income and expenses. And so this is kind of a very shorthand version of how we can explain what a budget is. So basically what a budget is, or a spending plan, whatever you want to call it, they're the same thing really, is a place where you have listed all of your income. So all the money you have coming into your household. And you list all of that and then you total it up. And then you want to have that in that same document, a place where you can list all of your expenses. And this is where the spending tracker is really handy, because now you know, before you even make a plan, how much money you spend, basically kind of like in your natural environment. So if you don't have a plan, what do you just naturally spend as a family or as an individual? And so then you can list all of those as the expenses, or you can make that just be a starting place for listing your planned expenses. So you can say, here's how much I am currently spending in this category. I would like to actually spend less than that, or I feel like I could devote a little more to that. And so you can make those choices at that point. Anyways, so then you total up all of those expenses and you get a bottom line for that. So you have a total amount of income and a total amount of expenses. And then the next step is to subtract your expenses from your income. And if you get a positive number, that means you are spending less than you're earning. And that's called I can't think of the word right now. Net gain, I guess. I can't think. There's zero net, positive. Anyways, it means you are positive, basically. If you get a negative number when you subtract your expenses from your income, that means you are spending more than you're earning. And that's a net loss. And so that is something that's probably not sustainable over the long term. There are certainly times in everyone's life, particularly like students, when people are spending more than they're earning. But over the long term, that's probably not sustainable. You'll wind up being in debt. And then sometimes people, the rare person, gets a zero. So that means that they are spending exactly the same amount as they're earning. And that's amazing when that happens. But that's called a zero net. And that means that basically people have just managed to figure it out and spend exactly the same amount as they're earning. And so those are your three kind of things that you'll find out once you do a spending plan. And that'll give you what's known as your bottom line. And so then you have some decisions to make based upon that bottom line. Oh, whoops. And basically what they are is, if you are earning more than you're spending, then you're in a good position and you can decide what to do with that that surplus of income that you're not spending. You could put it into savings, you could do whatever you want. If you are spending more than you're earning, then you really have three choices left to you. And one of those is to increase your income. So figure out how to bring more money into your household, or decrease your expenses. So how can you spend less money? That's another place that something like a spending tracker is very helpful. Or your third choice is to do a little bit of both. Maybe you can increase your income by a little bit, decrease your expenses by a little bit, and then figure out how you can get that budget into a place that you would like for it to be. So really what we're talking about mostly is making things balance out. It's about balance and adjustments throughout the course of your money management life. Okay. Now I'm going to turn it over to Lori.
Okay, and Sharon was just telling you about the miracles of money management. Yeah, to increase your income, reduce your expenses, do a little bit of both. I was thinking about this the other day, and I remember when I first started teaching money management and talking with people about making a plan and managing that plan. And I used to think that if you came to a zero balance, you had no money left. Like, what happens? Oh my gosh, there's nothing else. What if you need something? Well, basically it means that you've accounted for everything that you intend to spend on. And that includes saving, putting money aside so that you have that money set aside. If you should need something, it doesn't mean, oh no, I don't have any money. And I think that's important to remember too, because particularly for young people, as we're trying to help them figure this all out. If you looked at a spending plan and saw zero, you probably would think you don't have anything left. And so important to think about that as we're doing the spending, accounting for our spending and looking at the total plan. Wanted to mention too, we do have a spending tracker for our Rentwise program that we can send along too. Just a little foldable thing that you can actually slip around debit card or credit card and hold on to that and then account for that spending as you go. So, thinking about the miracles of money management and increasing your income. And if you were to increase your income, how might you do that? Or how, as you think about increasing income, how might you do that? Let's hear from all of you. If you want to put it in the chat, that's fine. What do you think? For myself, I always think, well, I work better than 40 hours most of the time. And so, it's very difficult to try to pick up a part-time job to do something else. Yeah, Sharon, get a second job. Dinah says get a part-time job. Yeah, it might be kind of difficult depending on the job that you currently have to pick up something like that. Even some things like, something that I've done recently is begun to sell things that I don't use any longer. Maybe it's clothes that you have that you can put on one of the websites that are available to sell on the secondary market. Yeah, have a garage sale might be another possibility. So then thinking about what are some ways to reduce expenditures? How might you do that? Cook at home more. Oh boy, we've done a lot of that in the last 15 months, Sharon. Stop eating out, lunches in particular, cut back on extras. Yeah, I was on a webinar recently that talked about lifestyle creep and those things that you start to feel as if you have to have in your life. They're almost like a need to you as you think about it, but it's really not a need. And, those things that creep into our lives. I was just looking at this. We have the Sirius XM radios. And, I haven't been driving my car because I haven't been driving to my office. So why am I keeping the level of a subscription like that I probably don't need to keep, right? So cutting back on something like that or adjusting a little bit. Maybe it's just little bits of things or maybe it's for a short period of time. Sharon mentioned the iced coffees that you start realizing that you all of a sudden that you've been having pretty regularly, things like that. Sharon also says she loves to shop at thrift stores. I'm right with you with that one. So there's a lot of different things that we might do. And yeah, Sharon, the pandemic taught you a lot about lifestyle creep. Yeah, there's a lot of that we don't even realize. And I think taking a look at our plan and thinking about creative ways that we might be able to cut back without it meaning anything cold turkey. Maybe it's something we do on occasion just to save a little bit of money. And yeah, so you're saying there's Sharon pedicures and highlights. Yep. I understand. Those are things that we can take a look at and things that maybe we can cut back. The eating out, another one that was mentioned earlier. Good examples. So if you're finding that things are out of balance, and I think especially with young people, you know, I think the standard of living that they experience at home is sometimes what they expect when they go out on their own as well. And so if that is the case, you know, helping them to understand that maybe you didn't have the things that you have when you were starting out as well, so that they begin to understand that it does take some time to build some of those things as well. And learning how to save and to maybe reduce our expenses in some ways is a part of getting to understand that. Next slide, please, Sharon. So we're going to try an activity, not just yet, but I'm just going to run you through this to make sure that everyone knows what we're doing, because we'll do this on the next slide. But on your screen right now in Zoom, you should see you are sharing. Let's see. Right now, Sharon is sharing the screen, so you should probably see you are viewing Sharon's screen. And right next to that, you should see view options with an arrow dropping down. And when you drop down or you click on that arrow, you should see annotate. And when you click on annotate, you will see the next toolbar there that I've highlighted with the text. And when we get to this, you're going to want to click on the text. And so Sharon, if you will go forward to the next slide, we'll try something different as an activity. And what we're wondering is, what are some expenses that you need to consider when getting a new place? And again, this, you probably all know this. We haven't got young people joining us today, but as they're thinking about their places, what are you hearing from them? What are some of the things that they're considering? And again, if you will go to that drop down, the view options, annotate, and then the text, you should be able to type right into our slide. There you go. And share some expenses that maybe young people are considering as they're getting their new place. Okay, groceries. Sure, everybody needs to have groceries in their home. Laundry. Yeah. Not only the place that it is done, but the laundry supplies, right? Okay, auto insurance, definitely something that you need to have. You have to have insurance in Minnesota. It's a state law, I assume in other states as well. Furniture, food, utilities. Great. Yeah, if you spend all the money on the place, right, you have no place for, or no money to spend on the furniture or other things to go in it, right? Okay, food, great. So I think very often, you know, as someone is looking at getting a new place, they're thinking about what the expenditures are that get them into the place, and not those things that will happen regularly. And they need to be considering all of these things and planning for them in their spending plan, and to make sure that they can afford everything that they intend to afford during the time that they're living in their new space. And so that just helps for them to think about, you know, what are some of those other things that I really do need to take into consideration, because you're not going to lose, you know, maybe the car payment or the auto insurance, or you know, another new one to think about in this case would be renter's insurance that they haven't had to think about before. And so there are things that will be consistent and continue on, and there will be new things that they'll have to consider and figure out how to do that. And that's where that balance of the plan comes into play, and figuring out how to make everything balance in order to get those things that you need, and also to be able to afford some of the things that you want as well. All right. Thanks for doing that activity with us.
That worked really well too. You all are doing
Yeah.
great with our innovations.
We've got experts here, right?
Oops, I gotta
Oh,
clear
we have
the.
to clear it though. Yep, that's what we need to do.
Let's see. Clear all drawings. There we go.
There you go. Thank you.
Mhm.
All right. And so, once you found a place and complete an application, the property managers want to know a little bit about you as the renter. And so, that means you need to provide some information. And if there is a social security number provided on an application, property managers are going to check employment status, income, credit reports. And generally, if a signature is provided on that application, that is giving permission to check those items as well. And I think that's often startling for young people to realize that those kinds of things can be looked at. So important to remember that property managers can request the social security number. They should be requesting the names of all the people who will live in a rental unit, and important that people understand that as they move forward in the tenancy as well, that continues on for the duration of the lease. Then the property manager should know who all is living in that unit. They may ask for references. They may ask about income, whether or not you're able to afford that place. Employer names and dates, length of time at the current job, but they cannot request information related to your age, your marital status, your race, religion, gender, whether or not you're participating in assistance programs, or very detailed financial information. And if those types of things are being requested, those would not be in line with the fair housing laws. It's important to recognize that too. And again, I think there are situations sometimes where young people are not aware of what their rights are related to information that can be asked and should not be asked. So important to make them aware of that. Next slide, Sharon. Thank you. And so as you consider the expenses that you have obtaining a new home, understand that property managers can look at your credit report and determine if you are a good credit risk. And so they may look at record of payments. Have things been paid on time? Have you had late payments? Another thing to think about too is if you've had a limited credit history, perhaps you've had different ways of paying for things. I can remember back in the 80s, first getting an apartment and such, and you may be paying by check for something, like a car payment or something, and drop it off at the bank at that time. Maybe you're still using things like that, a check, and dropping it off at whoever the creditor happens to be. In a case like that, you would not necessarily have information that is reported on a credit report, right? It might just be to the person locally that you're dealing with. And in a case like that, you may want to ask for a letter of reference that would support your good credit history that shows that, yes, indeed, you do pay on time all the time. And it's just that maybe you haven't been using the systems that are in place now that would show up on a credit report.
And my son, Sean, my 20-year-old, had to establish a credit history. He didn't really have much of anything. And so he found that he needed to have something before property managers would look at his application too.
Sure. And I know that comes up from time to time when we've done some classes, and people will ask, well, what should I do in order to establish that history? And I know very often it's getting a credit card that has perhaps a limited, maybe it's a secured card that has only $1,000 or $500 or something credit available. And then making sure that you charge something small and pay it off right away in order to start establishing that history. And we'll take a look at a little bit of credit history as well as we go forward here. All right, and important that people are getting information about their credit reports in the source that they need to use. Annualcreditreport.com is the only place that you can get a free credit report. And well, I guess that, you know, your credit card certainly can provide you that information. Now, very often they are provided as a part of what that company provides you in information. However, annualcreditreport.com provides one credit report per year per credit bureau. And right now, during the pandemic, that has been, you can access your credit report weekly from each of those bureaus. And that has now been extended to April of 2022. And so that's always good information to know. And certainly, you know, I think young people may not understand why it's important to be checking those things as well. And important to know that if there's something being said about you that's not accurate and that you can correct, that you go ahead and do that to provide the best information that you can about your credit. And so I just really always encourage people to check their credit reports and see what's out there. So annualcreditreport.com. And whoops, go ahead. That's all right, Sharon. Thanks. And here's an example of what a credit report might look like. You see number one there, the report number and the general information about the individual. Their address is generally provided on there as well. Number two, then looking at the index of the information you will find. Number three, you won't always see things listed in this way as potentially negative items, but on this one, in this example, you see potentially negative items, and it tells you what you might see there as far as the negative items. And you see the public records and so on down the list. I wish we had the full report. They're very often hard to find when we look for samples of credit reports, but in the RentWise workbook, you will find that as well, and we'll provide that too. So the property manager, of course, is going to look for the potential renter's history of payment and debts. And again, the property manager is looking to see if you are a good credit risk or the individual is good credit risk, and to know that they are reliable and paying on time all the time, and that they won't have an issue with that payment. We should say too that if they're people that have had some past history and had some problems, we also have some materials that are in the workbook that talk about ways to explain what your situation was and why things have changed. And I think that's helpful too, to be able to frame that in a way that's a positive. Okay, Sharon. Oh yeah, the study, you just mentioned the study that found that 25% of credit reports had errors. Yeah, and errors of some sort. It might just be simply something like a wrong address or a misspelling of a name or something like that. But it can cause problems. I have a friend that her name was, well, she had one name that was very similar to someone who had a very poor credit history. And then she happened to remarry and had a name that was very similar to a pastor. So she went from one extreme to the other in terms of who her credit was getting mixed up with. So you have some situations where you sometimes have to look and make sure that is indeed you on the credit report when you're reviewing it. If we look at what's in the credit score, and this is something that people are often asking about as Sharon and I are doing classes, what's involved in your credit score? What makes it up? And so you see there on your screen, the blue section, 35% is your payment history. So that means pay on time all the time, what have you done in the past? And so that's an important component. And you see how important it is because it is 35% of the score. The section in the purple is the amount owed. So the amount owed in proportion to the amount of credit that is available to you. And you see that is 30%. And so the message there is to keep balances low. And those two components, the payment history and the amount owed, are 65% of the score. So you're well over half of the score with those two items. If you're just keeping payments low, or the amounts owed low, and make the payments all the time. And very often people are concerned about the length of their credit history, and you see that's only 15%. So if you have a good payment history and you're keeping the amounts owed low, the length of the credit history is not going to be as important. Also, the new credit that you could take on, you see there is 10%. And then the types of credit used. So not just revolving credit card debt, but also looking at installment loan type of activities as well. So that can help with people understanding a little bit about what is there in the credit score. The basic strategies then related to credit in terms of getting, starting off and getting a new place, pay on time. It's important to remember that paying off a collection won't eliminate it for at least 7 years, depending on the kind of debt you're looking at, 7 to 10 years. Contact your creditors if you're not able to pay, and see a credit counseling service if it's difficult to make payments. Keeping balances low on revolving credit is important. And then very often people will think that if I open new accounts, or if I close this account, or I move it around, those are not strategies that generally work. So important to remember that as they're dealing with credit and debt issues. So at this point, we're getting close to the end of our hour here. And so we want to know if you have other questions, if there are things that we can address. Again, we'll have some materials available for you that we can send out along with a thank you email. And we can refer you to some of those if you have particular questions in mind right now. We can help out with where you might find it and the materials that we're sending. So let's see. If you have questions, continue to put them in the chat. That's fine. We can answer those as we're moving forward. But we also have a short evaluation that we would hope that you would fill out for us. We can put that in the chat as well. And as we mentioned, follow-up email will be coming to you. It says in a few months. No, I think we'll be earlier than that. We just need to get the recording for you and be able to send that out a lot, as well as the material. So I would expect that will be coming soon. Okay, Wendy has one question for us. Where is the best place to get student loans?
Department of Education, I would say. The guaranteed student loans are the safest.
Yeah. Yeah, I would stick with those because you do have some protections along with them. So I would say that is the safest.
I'm going to stop sharing so that I can copy those things and put them in the chat. And
all right.
Wendy, you can fill out the FAFSA, the FAFSA, and that is a place for you to start to see what kind of loans you qualify for your family. And it's FAFSA.gov that I'll look up that stuff for you in a sec.
I'm also going to share in the chat that if you need to document that you've attended this webinar, we are able to give you a certificate, and I will give you the email. It's Sarah Krymans that you will be sending an email to, and she is able to provide a certificate. So if you do need that, feel free to give her, shoot her a quick email, and you should be able to get that certificate of attendance.
And I just put a link to the evaluation in the chat there. You can click on it and it'll take you right there and you can fill it out online. We would really appreciate that. And oh yeah, I was gonna.
And just be sure to engage with us. We've had so many people across the country that have joined us for our webinars, and we usually put information on our Facebook, our Instagram, our Pinterest, our Twitter. We have videos on our YouTube as well, and so make sure that you follow all of those and find the latest information. At this point, we are the last of all the webinars for the spring and summer session. And so you will want to check those for any upcoming webinars. But I would expect that we will be looking at September for the next round of webinars to be happening. So
We're getting well, thank you very much for attending. There we are again. It was fun spending time with you today. And we've been getting sort of the message that people are tired of webinars and are ready to get out and be in the real live space of other people for a little while. So we're going to wait before we do more webinars. Oh, let me look up that.
And it's so beautiful outside now. So we certainly understand that people don't want to be sitting inside when they're able to get out and about now. So we so appreciate you joining us. We'll stick around here a few minutes if you have other questions that you would like us to answer, but we appreciate you being here with us today. And thanks for joining us.
And Wendy, there's the FAFSA thing for applying for student aid. There you go, 5 p.m. on the dot.
Oh boy, how about that?